Hey everyone, welcome and thank you for joining this edition of Edit with Me. I'm Caitlin Rossi, the creative director at Storyblocks. If this is your first time joining us, we are a stock media library and platform that helps brands and creators make better video content faster than ever. We have a live tutorial for you today, and you'll be learning how to create whimsical special effects using stock footage, Photoshop's AI generative fill feature, and 3D camera tracking in After Effects. Your instructor today is the creator, animator, and motion designer Will Carmack. Will teaches special effects editing to an audience of 84,000 subscribers on YouTube. His style is unique, inviting, and really stretches the bounds of imagination. Will, you are a perfect person to have here today teaching this tutorial. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here and showcase some amazing visual effects tricks.
All right, a couple notes for the audience before we get into things. You'll notice on the right that there is a chat and a Q&A window. You can ask questions there at any time throughout the demo, and we're going to be addressing as many as we can in real time. But we also have time at the end of the tutorial to get to anything that we don't cover throughout. And then second, this event will be recorded, so you can take a look at it afterwards, share it with colleagues, anything like that. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Will to get right into our demo.
Amazing. Hello, everybody. The trick that I'm showing you today is basically called set extending. If we're looking at my screen right now, you'll see that I have this woman running in an empty valley. But if I'm trying to make like a fantasy movie and I want to make this scene more fantastical, maybe I want to add something like mountains or a castle or just maybe some more medieval elements to something like this. Well, I can show you with the trick that I am going to be explaining today, you will end up with something like this where you can add set extensions that you've generated within Photoshop. And so the big trick about the effect that I'm showing you today is the fact that these are in a moving image. So for example, just a quick overview of what's going to happen. You're going to open up a screenshot of your video in Photoshop like I have here. And this is the original image. And then just we're slowly going to generate different pieces that we can add in later. And usually people will do this trick with a tripod shot because it's really easy to make a set extension if your camera's not moving. But the magic sauce that I'll be showing you today is how to add these static 2D set extensions into a scene with 3D camera tracking. And so this is amazing, super fun trick. That you can turn any kind of empty field or any scene that you want to make a little bit more spicy. You can go with from something like this to an amazing, cool field of ancient ruins. Here's another fun example of just a big empty field I turned fantastical and medieval. And so, without further ado, I will start explaining the process. And first, and the most important step, is where you even get footage that you want to work with. And I found this amazing clips on Storyblocks. And so, a lot of people might think you just go straight to the Storyblocks website, but Storyblocks actually has an extension built straight into After Effects. I'll just show you really quick. This is the Creative Cloud desktop app. If you just search up Storyblocks, you can actually download a plugin that installs directly into After Effects. So if you go up to Window, you have your extensions layouts, and you'll see here once you download that extension that you have Storyblocks. And also, if you don't want to go through the hassle of downloading another extension, you can always just go to storyblocks.com to find your footage. And so I'm going to show you how I found this footage. Um, so once you have the Storyblocks window open, I'm just going to actually switch it to footage. And I've already downloaded the footage that we're going to be using today, but maybe you could type in something like lady walking in mountain. Look at that. There's actually a million different ladies walking into a mountain. So Storyblocks does have a ton of options that you'll be able to pick from. I wonder if I'd be able to find my lady in this specific search. But I'm very happy with the footage I'll be using today. Um, but yeah, I recommend downloading the Storyblocks extension for After Effects. And so I already have my footage ready to go. Okay, so here we are. And the first step of this trick is going to be 3D camera tracking, which is, of course, super easy. So in After Effects, the way you 3D camera track something is you select your clip, and then over in the right, you'll see the tracker panel. And sometimes your default After Effects layout doesn't open up the camera tracker. So just in case you're not seeing that, you can go up to the top where it says Window and find the option that says Tracker. So we're just going to open up our tracker. I got rid of mine. So the easiest trick in After Effects is 3D camera tracking. All you've got to do is hit this button right here, Track Camera. And After Effects is going to automatically track your scene. For you, it actually might take a little bit longer. I have pre-tracked this. And so here we are. We have a 3D camera track. I'm going to get rid of this camera. So all these little colorful points, I call them skittles. These are your 3D tracking data. And everywhere you see a target show up is somewhere you can put a 3D or 2D object. Just for example, I'll click on this target here, and what we're going to do is right click and create solid and camera. I'll repeat that. A solid and camera is what we always want to create doing this trick. And so you see we have that giant solid track to the ground, and you can use 3D rotation arrows to just like see what you're actually looking at. And so I have this giant blob tracked into the scene. So that's just a quick example. So once you've 3D camera tracked your scene, you're going to want to figure out where you would want to put a set extension. And then, because if I go back and just reference the Photoshop file I was looking at earlier, these are all set pieces that I want to track into the scene. So you have to have a little forethought when you're going through your 3D camera track and figuring out where you would want to 3D track a set extension. So I want to start with just a big castle in the distance. So I'm just going to find a target, a 3D target of an area where I would want to put a castle. So actually, this spot right here looks perfect. So when you do find the spot you want to track and you like your target, you're going to right click on your target and we're going to create solid. Um, and you've already created a camera. You always want to do a 3D solid. And here's the trick. Everyone, I need you to pay attention to me. This is so important because what we're doing is creating a 3D placeholder. This solid we've tracked is going to end up being the castle we want to add into the distance. So what that means is we need to orient this 3D tracked solid to be facing the same way we would want the castle to face. So you'll see on any 3D tracked solid, you have these arrows that lets you reposition the solid in 3D space. And so since we want the castle to be facing us, we're going to turn this around until it's facing the direction we would want the castle to be. So I'm just going to use my 3D arrows to orient it to be facing the camera. Something like this. And you'll notice the part that's actually 3D tracked to the ground is the middle of this solid. And we want this when our castle is in the scene, we want it to be 3D tracked exactly where this arrow is, where the anchor point is. So what we're going to do is actually move this up to the point where the bottom is tracked to the ground. So maybe raise that up a little more. We basically want the bottom of our solid to be the thing that's tracked to the ground. So that looks amazing. So what we're going to do is we've got our 3D placeholder. I'm going to move my anchor point to the bottom of this. So this is your anchor point, the 3 arrows right here. And to move an anchor point, I'm going to hold Y, click Y, and then just move it down here. So just for example, when we replace this 3D placeholder with our castle, we're going to be able to scale it up and down from this point. Okay, super juicy. So this is the first and most important step whenever you want to add something into your scene with a 3D set extension is getting a placeholder first. Because now we know we can put anything we want right there. Okay, Now for generating our assets, I'm just going to isolate my clip. And I always usually like to start at the very first frame when I'm going to generate an image because usually it's the widest the scene is going to be. So we're going to export a frame of this video into Photoshop. So the way we do that in After Effects is we'll come up to composition, and in composition there's an option that says save frame as, and I'm just going to save frame as file, and it's going to open up your render queue. I'm just going to delete all my other things. Boop. And you can actually just export it as a Photoshop file. So I'm just going to name this Photoshop. That's kind of a lame title. And then, of course, once you have your frame ready to export, up here, we'll just hit render. And so we're just going to find where we put that file. And I already have Photoshop open. And so I'm just going to open my Photoshop file in Photoshop. Here we are, guys. This is where the magic's going to happen. And if you need to reference your After Effects file to see where you've generated your placeholder, that's fine as well. It's important that you generate near or around where this track solid is. And so let's see. I'm going to generate a huge castle back here. And the way we do that in Photoshop is really easy. We can grab the lasso tool. We can just make a big selection where we want to put something. So we have this big selection right here, and you'll see the generative fill box pop up in Photoshop. And we're just going to hit generative fill, and it's going to let us type in a prompt. And I'm just going to type in medieval castle. Oh man, I don't know if I spelled medieval right, but we're going to see. We're going to see. And so Photoshop has one of my favorite generative expand uh, because look, we've already got a castle and it actually gives you multiple options to play with. Um, I'm actually not super happy, so I'm just going to do brick castle in my prompt instead of medieval castle. I'm just going to see what happens there. But, you know, sometimes generative AI can be tricky and you're not like happy with your option. And Photoshop's my favorite because look, it's been like 1 minute and I've already got 6 different castles I can pick from. So maybe that's the castle I want to put into my scene. Or this one. Actually, I already have the castle I'm going to put in there. But so let's say this is the castle you want to track into your scene. This is super important. You actually have to cut the castle out because if I isolate just this image that we've actually generated, it's not only generating the castle, it's generating the background along with it so it can like maximize blending the castle into the background. But let me show you what happens if you just export this and bring it into After Effects. So here's a great example. Right here in your top left, this is an asset I exported with this background attached to it. And so now, since the sky in this cutout isn't the same spot in 3D space as the actual sky, you're going to notice almost immediately that you've like exported like a weird chunk of an image. Because since there's parts of this image that aren't in this 3D point in space, it doesn't work. The effect is ruined. So anything you generate within Photoshop, you then have to cut out. And so the way I would do that is literally just selecting on your clip and using the pin tool and just going through and cutting the whole thing out. Or if you're feeling super lazy, you can even grab the quick selection tool and just click on the castle like this. And you can just Control C, Control V, copy and paste your castle like so. Luckily for us, I've already cut out all the pieces of the castle, so we don't have to worry about doing that. But I can show you the original piece of the castle looked like this, and I cut it out to be like that. It is super important to always export your set extensions without the extra fluff. And the reason why this is totally okay in my book is because Photoshop makes the lighting perfect. The reason why this effect works so well is because the generative fill in Photoshop matches the scene's lighting, grain, noise, and everything. So you can cut out the background it came with, and the set piece is still going to be perfectly blended in to your scene. So we've generated something into our Photoshop file, and now we're going to bring it into After Effects. So my favorite way to do this is to just like right click on your PNG image that you've created in Photoshop, and there's an option called Quick Export as a PNG, which you can then save it. Um, you can see I was working on a Lego thing earlier. And so you can just save it as a PNG. Okay, so that's how you generate new extensions in Photoshop. And you can see here, just through the different methods I've gone through and just like generated multiple castles of everything. So if you were to do this full effect and generate a full scene, you would find something like this, where you have tons of different generations of different pieces of the set that you would end up cutting out. It's really customizable. You could even do something like this, which I thought was crazy, is I added a moat into the final. So using Photoshop to build your set pieces is really fun because you can truly add just like a million different things. Um, and yeah, we love customizability. Beautiful. Okay, so now back in After Effects, let's find our lady with the placeholder. So we've got our placeholder and we've got our castle asset. So I'm just going to bring in the castle I've already generated. So you're just going to bring the castle that you've generated in Photoshop and cut out into your scene. And so there's your castle. And so here's the magic of the placeholder. Really quick, I'm just going to adjust maybe my placeholder to move right into the middle, because that's where I generated that castle in my other Photoshop. So it's always good to keep checking that your 3D placeholder is actually still in the spot that you want it to be. And so here is one of my favorite After Effects tricks, and anyone who uses After Effects, listen up. So this castle isn't a 3D object yet. So I'm going to, in the layers panel down here, you'll see the cube. You can actually turn it into a 3D object. And so it's actually floating right in the middle of the scene, which is funny. Like the castle, the camera flies right by it. It's actually so perfectly 3D tracked into the scene. But we want it to be where the placeholder is. And so the easiest way to do that is if you hold down Shift and you grab this swirl, the parent and pick whip tool. So you're holding Shift and then you attach it to the track solid. It automatically snaps to that position in 3D space. And so I'm just going to rotate it and make sure that the bottom of the castle, this is so important, guys, please pay attention. The placeholder acts as like the exact guide of where you want to put your castle. So I'm going to make sure that my castle, the bottom of the castle, is the bottom of the 3D placeholder. Remember, we need our anchor points to line up, and to move an anchor point, you hit the Y key. So I'm moving the anchor point of the castle to the bottom so I can scale it up from the bottom like this. So I'm just going to make the castle really big, huge. And then now we have our castle 3D tracked into the distance. So freaking amazing. Let's see, let me grab this mask really quick. You can see her hat. I masked her hat to fly over in front of the castle, which I don't have here. So let me just grab that mask really quick. Love that detail. And so she throws her hat into the air like she's running into the distance into a mountain. And so, in simple terms, this is how you do this effect, how you 3D track set extensions into your video. Um, and once you've rinsed and repeated this process a few times, you end up with something like this, where all of your different set pieces that you generated can build a really cohesive, fantastical image, building on top of amazing Storyblocks stock footage. So we have this amazing shot already, but now we can change it to literally anything we want. Um, Something I've done recently, let's see if I can pull up an example. I've been turning Lego Star Wars ships into space. The original image is literally just a tablecloth, but now I can add space rocks to this. So even though I've built this castle scene, in other scenes you can do something as crazy as like adding a castle into your scene. And so this is a really fun, fantastical effect that you anybody can do with footage that you can find on Storyblocks or footage that you shoot yourself. And so now I'm going to teach you a combo move. So obviously this is a cool effect, very fun. But let's say you want to make like a stylish animation where you have these things pop into frame. And so here I'm going to show you a fun little trick. So this is a version of this where I actually animate all of our new set pieces to kind of like glitch into existence. And it's just kind of a fun, like let's say this itself was a video I posted on Instagram and I was like, "Look everybody, I am frolicking through castles." And then I post like a BTS follow-up and being like, "Just kidding. I'm actually in this big field and this is how I made this video." Like that's how I imagine like this would be a really good hook to a concept like that. So just like a really creative, juicy animation of bringing the set pieces into your scene. And so we're going to find some glitch assets. Conveniently, we've got the Storyblocks extension inside of After Effects. So again, to go to that, after you've downloaded it, you go to Window, Extensions, and Storyblocks. And so again, I've already downloaded my glitch assets, but I just want to show you to get it, it's important that you go from templates to footage. And I'm just going to type in glitch. And I actually think this clip right here is the one I'm using anyway. So from there, you can just like download the glitch asset that you want. Confirm. And then what's cool is you'll see that the glitch downloads straight into your Adobe After Effects project panel. Really nice, very user friendly. So I'll just start with our castle here. So here's the trick. Everybody, pay attention. So I'm going to grab my epic brick castle and I'm going to duplicate it twice, okay? All right, so we've duplicated our castle twice, and that's just Control D or Command D. And so for the first castle, what we're going to do, and this is another great After Effects shortcut and hack, so everyone pay attention. But that one of the two duplicates of the castle has now been replaced with this glitch layer, which is now 3D tracked in that exact same position. Just because that's such a good After Effects trick, I'm just going to do that one more time. So we're going to grab our glitch and make sure we're selected on our castle layer we want to replace it with. We're going to hold down Alt and drag it on top of our brick castle. So now our glitch effect is in the exact same 3D spot as our castle. And so this is where our second duplicate comes into handy. So we are going to grab the track matte pick whip of our glitch here. So you'll see in the layers panel, you have this track matte pick whip. And we're going to grab this and attach it to our brick castle. And what this does is it makes our glitch layer only confined to the pixels in our castle layer. So we have this super fun glitchy look only where the castle is. And so what we're going to do is with the original castle layer, I'm just going to cut it maybe like halfway down the composition, just like this. And what I'm going to do, guys, is so important, so important. Our glitch layer that we've now used as uh, like a matte, we're going to go to the blending mode and set it to add. Oh, and this is a good time to get rid of your track solid. So you can see here, we have this glitching castle in the distance, which in itself is actually a really cool effect. We just have this glitch that can only be shown where the castle is, blended on top of the background. And so the effect that I'm going to do here is eventually our original castle is going to showcase underneath of our glitch, which is when I will cut the glitch off. So it'll look something like this. And just to make the timing of it all good, I will cut the glitch to only show up for like maybe a second and then get rid of it. So it happens kind of fast. And so we have this really fun animation of our castle glitching into existence. And it's so freaking fun. And if you wanted to be bold and crazy with it, you could maybe make this layer glow. Hold on, let me see if that's. I'm just testing something out. Let's see if this works. And you add a glow. My favorite glow effect is deep glow too. This doesn't work. Okay, this works. Heck yeah. Oh, that looks crazy. So basically, this effect is pretty customizable simply because you can add glows and really fun stylizing effects to your glitch. So it's going to look like a glitchy silhouette of a castle comes into screen, and then bam, your castle is generated. That looks so freaking cool. Oh my goodness. Low key obsessed. And of course, just like our first effect that we went over, once you've rinsed and repeated that process with all of your different set pieces, you can make a really cool animation like this, where everything you've now generated from nothing gets glitched into existence. And it's just a really fun effect to play with. Um, I think that's like the meat and potatoes of this. Um, okay. So obviously we'll have questions in a bit. So get your questions prepared. I've got something to show you. So this is what I would consider like the laborious, labor-intensive way to customize your shot with set extensions. You know, it's your After Effects to Photoshop to After Effects pipeline, right? But let's say you're in a time crunch and you don't have time to do all that. So you can actually do this same similar effect with the Storyblocks website. So I actually have the Storyblocks clip here in the Storyblocks website, and you'll notice that under the option to download it is edit it with AI. And so this is for the people out there who need like just a quick turnaround, maybe like a storyboard or a pitch deck, um, and you want to create a similar scene where you look at this footage on Storyblocks and you go, you know, it would be cool if we put a castle behind her. So we can click on Edit with AI, and you'll notice it actually gives you a few options here. And the thing we want to do is basically change the background because I want to add a castle in the background. So out of these three options, I'm going to do change the background. And you can only do 5 seconds of a Storyblocks clip where you edit or add something with AI. So I'm just going to keep it with the first 5 seconds. Okay. So everyone, get your questions ready because it's going to take a second. So I'm going to show you just an example of how Storyblocks can achieve um, the same effect that we just did within Photoshop and After Effects. So I'm going to make the prompt have a massive brick castle in I'll say in the distance. And I'm going to hit generate video. And I've got credits. And so I'm just going to hit generate. And so now we're going to wait for this to generate. Hopefully I can answer some questions while we do that. But essentially the AI editing tool in Storyblocks is just a really fun way to do this effect.
Sorry, I think we lost your audio for a sec, Will, but hopefully you're back in now. Yeah, while we're waiting for this to generate, we can just do a quick PSA and then we'll go ahead and jump into questions. Um, so before we do that, Kyle, did you want to play through our finished products? I think one of the cool things that you did, Will, with the final shot after you added all the elements in was really brought it to life with extra like audio, special music effects, and that sort of thing as well.
Yes, I was able to find some medieval music and some glitch sound effects on Storyblocks, so I was able to make all the glitches of the buildings coming in actually sound realistic as well. And the medieval music really, um, it slaps. Amazing. Honestly, a wind effect does a lot of heavy lifting in any edit. Just some professional advice from me to you. Get a good wind sound effect.
Love it. Awesome. Yeah. So again, let's just do a quick PSA before we check in on our generation. Yeah. So if you enjoyed watching today, the good thing is that Will does this all the time over on his YouTube channel and through his Instagram. So go give Will a follow to see more of this in action. And then you can also check out storyblocks.com/resources for more on-demand webinars about video production, content strategy, editing, and more. We do these edit with me's every once in a while. So check in for more of those to come in the future as well. And with that, let's go ahead and jump into some of our questions while we're waiting for that final generation from Storyblocks to finish up. So Will, the first one that I'm going to kick off with, so obviously when sometimes we're using these generation tools, we can get sort of like a very rendered or less than real, effect from that. So the question here is like, are there any ways to make those renderings look a little bit more realistic after you generate them, or is there anything that you would kind of advise in prompting to get a more realistic look from those generations?
I guess, are they implying that the stuff I was generating in these examples doesn't seem too realistic to them? Because I think it looks pretty convincing to make it more realistic. There is, I do feel like the realism in Photoshop, like the examples I was showing, is as good as it gets when it comes to like how realistic something can look in Photoshop. But there is an option to make something higher quality. So like once you generate something in Photoshop, I don't know if you can share my screen, just to like showcase this option. But once you find like a set piece that you like let's say I really like this one, if you can see right here in this top left button, it's actually an enhance detail button. So there's two layers of quality you can get from generating an image. This first image here, and then enhance detail, which I think turns it from like 2 to 3K or 1 to 4K. And so just the details of this should be sharper than it previously was. But the realism on the Photoshop generative AI, I think it's pretty good. I mean, honestly, that looks really good to me. I guess sometimes when you are generating something like a castle, it might just like not look realistic. But like some things like this here, which is like a brick moat, I think this looks super realistic.
Yeah, I think like the like you mentioned, the lighting, the way that it's able to match the lighting where the sun might be coming from, kind of have shadows in the correct spots, is really cool. And I think obviously like this is a very kind of like whimsical, as you mentioned, like fantastical scene. So these types of things I think work really well in sort of that surrealist environment as well, where like obviously castles don't materialize out of thin air. So, this is a look for a very, specific kind of shot or video.
Yes, but I guess my ultimate advice for that question would be like just keep generating. I think the more options you generate, there's going to be one that you think rocks. Sometimes they do look janky.
Have you ever tried applying like overlays or different effects in After Effects to kind of blend the generated elements more in with your kind of, real captured footage?
Yeah, sometimes like I saw in one of the questions someone asked if I can show you the Lego project. I can't. But one of the great examples of that question is I'll get a smoke asset and put that over top of maybe like the blending section of one of these pieces. So maybe there's like fog or haze in the air, and I can download a visual effects asset of like moving haze or fog. And if you put that in front of some of your generated assets, that also kind of like blends it all together in like an immersive way. Or actually, once you have your entire scene generated from Photoshop, even just a good color grade with noise, like the noise effect, blends it all together. So once you put like a blanket noise, like blur everything, the footage just looks blended together because there's consistent like noise artifacts across the.
Yeah, sorry, Will, we lost your audio a little bit again at the end, but
No way.
I think we got most of that there.
Yes, adding noise and 3D tracked smoke layers, good way, and just a Lumetri color adjustment layer. So just color correcting your scene after you've added these things blends it all together even more.
Hmm. Before we jump to the next question, wanted to check in on the generation.
Let's see. It's still generating.
Okay, we will come back to that. All right, so the next question, can you take a photo, can you take your Photoshop files, bring them to life with Firefly and apply the same sequence extend um, to your sequence with MP4 overlays?
Let me see. Can you take your Photoshop file, bring them to life with fire? Sequence, extend your sequence with MP4 overlays. I wonder if they're implying. Is it just because maybe the clip that we used in After Effects is an MOV file? An MP4 file if should not change anything. So an MP4 overlay would be totally fine. Like the glitch overlays that we're using, I think are also MOV files, which is just a QuickTime file. It's just a different type of video file. But an MP4 would work just fine. It's just different types of video files. An MOV file just contains more like raw data. It actually will maybe be slower than an MP4 file. So that's the T.
All right, next question. Did you have to rotoscope the subjects in order for the hat to remain on top of the castle? Any relevant tips on subjects interacting with your scene extension?
Yeah, I had to mask the hat here. I'll show you. I have it isolated now. I had to mask the hat going on top of the scene extension here. Let's see. I think I have a fun version where I did this effect vertically. Um, and I shot this in the Maldives. And if it loads, at the end of this video, I run down this dock and I generated like a really cool. Everything in this scene is generated. I generated this lighthouse. And I actually think by the end of the shot, it looks incredibly convincing. I added these mountains, these lights, and this sky, all with the effect I just showed you guys. And what makes this effect sell so well is the fact that I masked myself in front of the lighthouse, which, of course, was originally not there. So, and I used rotoscoping for this as well. So, masking yourself in front of your generated elements, I think, is one of the best ways to sell the look. And also, this is just such a great example of making a scene cooler with the Photoshop generative fill scene extension method. Because now, what was just like an empty dock has a lighthouse, tons of lights, and two beautiful mountains. So the answer is yes. I rotoscope myself in front to make sure we get maximum blending.
All right, last one here. I think adding details that have movement in the scene helps to sell the realism as well. Adding static objects are just that, static. If the flag were to wave or there were birds flying, fire, etc.
Yeah, that's where like you could get like a combo of different assets. Like let's see if I can even go to the Storyblocks extension. I'm just gonna type in like fire, and if there's like a fire asset I can download, maybe there's like sections in the castle where you can just like put a fire. Well, I guess I'll do all video. And and you could probably just like, yeah, let's see, like this right here, this burning fire element, you could probably track that into a window in the castle, and have like moving assets on top of your static assets, which essentially would create one unique and complex image with multiple moving things. Which, like I was saying earlier, sometimes I like to blend all this stuff together by adding moving fog or smoke assets between the real footage and the generated assets just to create some movement there. Um, and just with the Lego thing I'm doing, I'm using lots of smoke assets that looks like it's coming out of the Lego ship to blend like the generated space planet surface because it was really shot on like basically a picnic table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, let's see if we've got any more questions coming in. Just a couple of comments. One more check-in on the generation. I feel like this is the risk you take doing live demos, but let's
Oh
see. All right,
yes,
we got it.
we got it. Let me make it full screen. So this is the AI generated castle Storyblocks gave us. You know, just like Photoshop, it does an amazing job matching the lighting. This is one of those things where Photoshop is really nice because you can like just immediately click through multiple options of a castle. But I still think this castle looks nice, matches the color really well. And so yeah, if you need a quick fix, if you don't want to have to go through all the After Effects to Photoshop to After Effects pipeline, you could just generate a castle with one click with the Storyblocks feature. Results may vary.
Yeah, and then for those curious, so the Storyblocks Edit with AI feature is powered by Runway Aleph, which is kind of specifically designed for altering existing footage, with their generation features.
Yep. And this looks great, guys. So, quick version of the castle method.
All right. Well, I think that is it for questions. We'll give the audience maybe one more minute as we're wrapping up. But yeah, anything else you want to add here? Tips for kind of getting the best? How do you come up with these ideas? Honestly, is what I want to ask you, because I think all of your work is just like so inventive and imaginative. So I want to peek inside your brain a little bit.
I will say, I feel like I've got some great bragging rights with some of these Photoshop effects. When they first released Firefly, which is this generative fill software they use in Photoshop, I was on the first ever campaign to showcase this feature. So I was one of the first creators ever who got access to this feature. And the first thing I did with this was just the smartest, most genius thing ever that I feel like really set the tone for how I would creatively think using this. But this was I think, a viral effect that everyone got from me because I was the first person to do it. I took top-down static shots of me laying on the ground, and instead of just doing like a generative fill where I replace something with the castle, you can actually expand your set. So I expanded shots of me laying on the ground so wide you could be like in the clouds looking down at like a whole forest. So I was turning little tiny scenes into like crazy drone shots, and it was just like so creative the way I was using this tool. And so that video did really well. Photoshop really loved it. And so every single time Photoshop does something with Firefly, um, they usually hire me to do something creative. So I've just kind of been on the ground level and getting paid to think creatively about how to use this stuff. And that'll do it.
That's a good task. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Will. We really appreciate your time today. Again, thank you to the audience for joining us. And, we'll be sharing out the recorded version of this as well. So if you want to go back to anything and walk through it, we also, if you scroll to the very top of the chat before we sign off, had shared a link to some of the assets that Will used today if you want to try and, again, walk through this process on your own. But yeah, thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for more content that we have coming this fall, or sorry, this spring.
Amazing. Wait,
Thanks, Will.
of course, wait, do they want to see the drone video really quick?
Let's do it if you've got it.
Yeah, it's pretty
Parting
cool.
gift.
It's this right here. So I generated this. I was just laying on the grass there, and look at that. We're
Nice.
now at the top of a freaking canyon. Okay, so I just had to. I couldn't show you after bringing it up, but yeah, sky's the limit. Everyone enjoy the new skill that you've just been taught.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Bye.